He used to call me his forever girl, the one he'd wait for at the end of every long workday, the one he wanted beside him when he built a life. For 5 years, I was his partner in everything, his safe place. Now he was sitting across from me at our favorite Italian place, eyes low, voice shaky, whispering, "I'm not sure about us anymore." I blinked, trying to breathe, but my chest was tight. I had rehearsed a million hard conversations in my head. This one had never been one of them. The spaghetti on my plate went cold while I stared at him. And all I could think was, how does love disappear quietly like that? Dominic and I met through friends. Nothing special. Just two people talking about 90s cartoons and why IPA beers taste like regret. We weren't a love-at-first-sight couple. We were slow burn, Sunday mornings, grocery shopping together kind of love. A year in, he moved into my place. 2 years in, we adopted a cat named Beans. By year 3, we were finishing each other's sentences and planning for a someday wedding. Last summer, he proposed on a hiking trail with shaky hands and a ring I didn't even care to look at. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. We told his mom first. She cried and hugged me like I was already family. My own mom, always. A little distant. Simply said, about time. We didn't want anything flashy. A small October wedding, dusty blue dresses, pasta buffet. It was me who did the planning. He'd nod along when I showed him vendors, say things like, "Whatever you want." I didn't mind. I thought he just trusted me with the details. I thought his silence meant peace, not distance. Looking back now, I see the signs everywhere. They weren't loud. They were quiet, like cracks spreading beneath tile. 3 months ago, he started pulling away. Nothing big, just little shifts. He'd come home and sit with his phone instead of talking to me. He started hanging out with Paul from work more, watching games, grabbing beers, staying out late. When I asked how the wedding guest list looked, he shrugged. When I showed him venues, he said, "That's a lot of money for one day." I told myself he was just overwhelmed. I told myself it was normal, but deep down, something started to ache, and I didn't know how to fix it. Last week, I planned a date night to reconnect. I booked reservations at the place where we had our second date. I wore the dress he always loved, curled my hair, even bought the beer he liked for after. I wanted it to feel like old times. But from the second we sat down, I could tell something was off. He was distracted, barely touched his food, didn't even compliment how I looked. I tried to smile through it, tried to ask about the honeymoon plans. That's when he dropped it. I'm not sure if I'm ready for all this. The silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd ever felt. I just stared at him, waiting for it to be a joke, but he looked serious. Scared maybe, but serious. "All this," he said again. "The wedding, marriage, everything." I felt like I was falling backwards in slow motion, but no one was catching me. I asked him how long he'd been feeling this way, and he said a few weeks. A few weeks. I'd been addressing envelopes, picking centerpieces, and he'd been quietly walking away in his head. That night, we didn't talk much. The ride home was quiet. Beans meowed when we walked in, and Dominic mumbled something about going to bed early. He slept on the couch. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hearing the hum of the refrigerator, the clicking of the cat's paws on the floor, and the silence between us. I kept thinking about how love doesn't always die in fire. Sometimes it just fades, and I didn't know which was worse, rage or emptiness. The next morning, he left early, said he was meeting Paul to watch the game. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the ring at him and demand answers, but I didn't. Instead, I sat on the kitchen floor, holding a coffee mug with shaking hands, wondering what the hell had just happened to my life. I called my best friend Lena, and she came over without asking questions. She sat beside me, poured us both tea, and let me cry. "You don't have to fix this right now," she said. "Just feel it." I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured our wedding day, the dress, the vows, the playlist we made together for the reception. Every memory we'd built started to feel like a lie. I wanted to believe he was just scared, that he'd come back around, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that something else was going on. No one just wakes up one day unsure about the person they've built their life with, unless they've already started imagining a different life. 2 days later, I got a text from one of his coworkers. "Hey, just checking in. Things got weird at the Rusty Nail. Are you okay?" My heart dropped. I called him immediately. He sounded hesitant, like he wasn't sure if he should be telling me anything. Then he said the words that changed everything. "Dom said something stupid to the guys last night. Joked that if you were prettier, he'd be more excited about marrying you." I sat on the bathroom floor and let the phone slide out of my hand. That's when I knew. I wasn't just losing a fiancé. I was losing the version of him I thought I knew. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with the covers pulled up to my chin, Beans curled against my hip. while my mind replayed that sentence over and over. If you were prettier, I'd be more excited about marrying you. The man who used to trace my stretch marks and call them the map of our love had now turned my appearance into a punchline for his friends. I stared at the ring on my finger. It used to feel like a promise. Now it felt like a collar, a cruel joke, a weight I didn't ask to carry. By morning, I couldn't hold it in. I texted Dominic, "We need to talk, now." He replied an hour later, casual as ever. "Hey babe, what's up?" Babe, as if I hadn't just heard about the humiliation he planted in a bar full of strangers. I called him. He didn't answer. He texted again. "Can we talk when I get home?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was too busy pacing the living room, my throat tight, palms sweaty, fighting the urge to scream into a pillow and break every glass we owned. He came home around 6. I was sitting on the couch, still in my pajamas, hair in a bun, eyes swollen. The second he walked in, I asked, "Did you say it?" He looked confused, like I was overreacting, like he didn't know what I meant. At the bar, I added, "Did you say if I was prettier, you'd be excited to marry me?" His face changed, a flicker of guilt, then annoyance, then that damn shrug. "It was just a joke," he said. "The guys were giving me crap. I was drunk." He tried to laugh it off. Said I was being too sensitive, that Paul started it. I asked if he thought it was funny, if making a joke out of 5 years, out of my face, my body, my entire identity, was funny. He said, "It's not like I meant it, but that's the thing about jokes. There's always a seed of truth in them," and I didn't need him to mean it word for word. I just needed to know why, in that moment, my worth was something he could auction off for laughs. I told him I was leaving for a few days. He tried to stop me, said I was blowing things out of proportion. "It's just wedding stress," he said. "People say stupid things when they're scared." I nodded. Then I packed a small bag, grabbed beans, and drove straight to my brother's apartment. Elliot didn't even ask questions when I knocked. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug so tight I couldn't hold back the sobs anymore. "He didn't," was all Elliot said. I nodded. He did. That night, I lay on Elliot's old futon, staring at the popcorn ceiling, trying to decide if 5 years of love could survive one night of betrayal. Could I forgive him? Could I ever look at him and not hear those words? "If you were prettier." I used to believe Dominic loved all of me. My crooked smile, my anxious spirals, the way I always read the last page of a book before starting it. Now I wasn't sure if he even liked me, or if I was just convenient until something shinier came along. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't bear to sit at the front desk of a dental clinic and force small talk while my entire life was unraveling. I didn't tell anyone but Lena. She dropped off my favorite soup and sat on the floor with me while I stared into space. "He doesn't get to make you feel small," she whispered. "He doesn't get to call you his forever, then treat you like an option." I wanted to believe her, but part of me still wanted Dominic to fight for us. Pathetic, I know. That afternoon, Valerie, his mom, called me. Her voice was trembling. "Honey, are you okay? Dominic told me you left." I stayed silent. "There's something you need to know," she added. "Can we meet?" I asked if she was calling to defend her son. She said no. She said she was calling as someone who'd lived through something similar. Her husband, Dominic's dad, left when he was 12, after years of slow emotional erosion. She didn't want me to go through that without the truth. So here I am, now, sitting in my car in a parking lot outside a coffee shop, watching Valerie through the window. She's already sitting with 2 mugs, one for me. I haven't gone in yet. My hands are sweating. My heart's pounding. I don't know what she's going to say. I don't know what Dominic told her. But if there's one thing I've learned in the past 48 hours, it's this. People don't break your heart in one grand moment. They do it slowly, with silence, with small betrayals, with jokes that aren't really jokes. I stepped inside the coffee shop with my stomach doing backflips. Valerie stood up when she saw me, arms open, but I didn't move. I think part of me was afraid that whatever she was about to say would break me in a way Dominic hadn't yet. She sat back down, her hands shaking slightly as she pushed the mug toward me. "Chamomile," she said softly. "I remembered it's your favorite." I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. The smell was familiar, comforting, cruel. She didn't waste time. "Dominic called me Sunday night," she began. "He was drunk, upset, rambling. He said things I wish I could unhear." I stared at her, my fingers clenched around the mug. "He told me he didn't know if he could go through with the wedding, that he felt trapped, that he thought he might have feelings for someone else." Her voice cracked on the last part. I closed my eyes. The room tilted. "There it is." My voice came out hoarse. "Who?" Valerie hesitated. "Maria, a project coordinator at his job." I asked if anything had happened between them, and he swore it was just feelings, nothing physical. I swallowed. "Does it matter?" She shook her head, eyes watery. "No, it doesn't. He let it go far enough to doubt you. That's betrayal, even if it never got physical." I hated that she was right. I hated that it was her telling me this instead of him. I begged him. "To tell you the truth," she continued. To be honest about his doubts, about Maria. But I don't think he was ever going to. Not really. I stared out the window, the trees outside blurring through tears. He used me as a placeholder, I whispered. Someone safe. Someone reliable, until someone shinier caught his attention. Valerie reached for my hand. You are not a placeholder. You are a partner. You've held him together for 5 years. He's the one who fell apart. She told me more about how Dominic's father had done the same thing to her. The emotional withdrawal, the cruel remarks, the gaslighting. I watched it happen, she said. And now I see it again in my son. And I'm so sorry. We sat there in silence for a while. 2 women with the same wound, years apart. She told me she'd always considered me family, and that nothing Dominic did would change that. I believed her. That somehow hurt even more. When I left the coffee shop, I didn't cry. Not yet. I drove around aimlessly, past the park where we'd had our first picnic, past the bar where we celebrated our engagement, past the apartment we'd filled with books and takeout and lazy Sundays. My phone buzzed again. Dominic. I didn't open it. Instead, I drove to Lena's place. I couldn't go back to Elliot's. Not after this. I needed my friend. I needed someone to hold the pieces of me while I figured out how to glue them back together. Lena didn't ask questions. She just opened the door, handed me a glass of wine, and pulled out the pull-out couch. We sat on the floor, watching reruns of reality TV while I stared at the engagement ring still on my finger. I feel so stupid, I finally said. I thought he loved me. Lena looked at me, eyes fierce. You didn't make this mess. He did. You showed up. You committed. He ran. I didn't reply. I just took off the ring and set it on the coffee table. It left a dent in my skin. The next day, I texted Dominic. I know about Maria. Don't contact me again until you're ready to tell the full truth. I didn't block him. Not yet. But I turned off notifications. I couldn't keep letting him control the narrative. Later that night, Karina, his sister, called. She sounded anxious. What's going on? Paul's been saying weird things at work, and Dominic isn't answering me. I told her what I knew. Her voice shook. He promised he would tell you. I told him he had to. That's when she slipped and said Maria's name. I asked what she meant, and she froze. I thought he already told you, she whispered. Please just talk to Valerie. She'll explain. I hung up. My chest felt hollow. I texted Valerie again. What else aren't you telling me? She called immediately. Meet me, she said. There's something Dominic didn't have the courage to admit, but I think you deserve to hear it. From me. So here I am again, back in my car. Another meeting. Another truth bomb waiting to detonate. I don't know what else Dominic has been hiding, but I do know this. I'm not his emotional babysitter. I'm not his therapist. I'm not a maybe. I'm someone who showed up, who stayed, who planned a life. And maybe, just maybe, I deserve someone who would never make me beg for the bare minimum. Valerie looked exhausted when I sat down across from her. Her eyes were red, like she hadn't slept. She was holding her coffee cup with both hands like it was the only thing grounding her. I didn't speak first. I couldn't. I was afraid of what she was about to say, and even more afraid of how it would change everything I thought I knew. She took a deep breath. There's something I didn't tell you yesterday. Something Dominic begged me not to share, but I couldn't let. You keep planning a life around lies. My throat went dry. What is it? Valerie looked at me, her face heavy with regret. He kissed her. Maria. The air left my lungs like I'd been punched. He swore that's all it was. Just one time. A moment of weakness. But he said it was enough to make him question everything. I blinked, trying to steady the swirl of heat and shame building behind my eyes. When? My voice was barely a whisper. About a month ago, after a late night at the office, I felt my body go cold. That was around the same time he started, sleeping on the couch more often. When the text replies about wedding plans became one-word answers. He'd kissed her. After 5 years, after calling me his future wife, he kissed someone else. Valerie was crying now, wiping her face with a napkin. I begged him to tell you. I thought maybe if he came clean, you two could at least move forward honestly. But he said he didn't want to hurt you more. Too late for that. I don't remember much of the drive back to Lena's apartment, just that the world looked different. Like the lens I'd been seeing everything through had cracked. Lena was waiting for me with takeout and a bottle of wine, but I couldn't eat. I just sat on her couch and stared at nothing. He kissed her, I said eventually. Lena put the food down. Oh, honey, I nodded. It's not about the kiss. It's that he lied. Again, that I had to find out from his mother. The next morning, I packed up the rest of my things from the apartment. Dominic wasn't there. Good. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to hear any more apologies or explanations or promises he wouldn't keep. I took what was mine and left the ring in a small box on the kitchen counter. No note, no goodbye, just silence. I blocked his number this time. For good. Not because I hate him, but because I finally realized he doesn't deserve access to me anymore. Karina called that afternoon. She'd heard everything from her mom. "I'm so sorry," she said. "If I'd known about the kiss," she trailed off. "It's not your fault," I told her. "He made his choices." She asked if I wanted help canceling the wedding. I hesitated, then said yes. Valerie and Karina took care of the phone calls, venue, caterer, photographer. I couldn't do it myself. I couldn't say the words out loud. The wedding is off. Moved into a small studio apartment the next week. Lena helped me unpack. We didn't talk much, but she didn't leave my side. My first night alone, I sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes, and let myself cry. Not the sharp, panicked sobs from the day I found out. These were quieter, deeper, mourning a life that would never happen, a future that vanished without warning. Then something strange happened. The crying stopped, and I felt lighter, not happy, but freer. Like I didn't have to keep carrying someone else's weight anymore. Like I didn't have to keep proving I was enough for someone who never really saw me. For the first time in weeks, I slept without waking up in a cold sweat. Started therapy. I told the woman everything. The jokes, the bar, the kiss, the lies, the way I felt invisible in my own relationship. She listened. She didn't tell me I was dramatic. She didn't say I should have seen it coming. She just said, "You're grieving," and that's allowed. I nodded, tears slipping down again, but they were different this time. Not from heartbreak, from relief. Dominic tried to email me once. I didn't open it. Just seeing his name made my chest tighten. Lena offered to read it for me, but I declined. I didn't want to know. Whatever he had to say, it didn't matter. Not anymore. I was done being the woman who waited for someone to choose her. I was already choosing myself. A week later, I got a package. No return address. Inside was the journal I'd kept while planning the wedding. Every little note, every detail I thought would lead to the happiest day of my life. I almost threw it away, but something made me open it. Tucked between 2 pages was a post-it. In Dominic's handwriting, "I'm sorry I couldn't be the man you deserved." I stared at it for a long time, then closed the book and put it on a shelf. Not everything needs closure. Some things just end. The apartment was too quiet without him. Even though I'd begged for space, even though I was the one who walked away, I couldn't pretend it didn't hurt. 5 years of shared routines, inside jokes, his coffee mug always left by the sink, gone. I kept waking up expecting him to be there, breathing softly next to me, stealing the blanket like he always did. But it was just me now, me and the silence. And it felt like the walls were listening. I didn't cry that much anymore. The tears had dried up, replaced by this heavy numbness. I went to work. I made dinner. I watched stupid TV shows that couldn't make me laugh. Every time my phone buzzed, a part of me still hoped it was him, even though I knew I had him blocked. I hated that. I hated that part of me still cared after everything, after he kissed her, after the joke, after lying for weeks while I planned our future like a fool. Lena was the only person who really understood what I was going through. She let me crash on her couch whenever the nights got too loud in my own head. She never pushed, never pried, just showed up with ice cream and a soft blanket and let me exist. One night, she looked at me and said, "You know, it wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong." I nodded, but I didn't believe her yet. Deep down, I still wondered if I was just not enough. A week passed, then 2. I started noticing things again. The way the sunlight hit the kitchen counter at 8 a.m., the smell of fresh laundry, the feeling of my own laughter when I wasn't thinking about him. They were small moments, but they felt like signs. Maybe I could be okay. Maybe the life I had before Dominic, the one with dreams and plans that didn't revolve around someone else, was still buried inside me. Then came the message, not from him, from Karina. "Hey, just so you know, he's been asking about you. A lot." I stared at my phone for a long time before replying. Asking what? Her answer came fast. "If you're okay, if you hate him, if there's any chance you'll talk to him again." I didn't reply. What was there to say? He had his chance. He made his choice. And he didn't choose me. That night, I deleted our shared Spotify playlist, the one we'd made for the wedding. I cried when I did it, not because of the songs, but because of everything they represented. Hope, trust, forever, all illusions. I made a new playlist, one just for me. I called it Healing. It wasn't full of sad ballads or angry breakup anthems, just songs that made me feel like I was still here, still standing. A few days later, I ran into Paul, of all places, at the grocery store. He looked surprised to see me, but not guilty, just smug, like he expected me to be a wreck. He actually had the nerve to say, "I didn't think you'd bounce back so fast. Must not have loved him that much." I stared at him for a second, then I said calmly, "No, I just love myself more now." I walked away before he could say another word. I didn't owe him anything. That was the moment I knew something had shifted. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't waiting. I wasn't hoping he'd come back and fix what he broke. I'd stopped trying to make sense of why he did what he did. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I was still here, still breathing, still me. I started taking walks again, the same trail where he proposed. At first it was painful, but the more I did it, the less I thought about him, and the more I thought about what I wanted. Not in 5 years, not with someone else, just now, just today, and for the first time in a long time. Today felt good. I didn't plan on rebuilding my life right away. It just kind of happened. One morning I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about him for a whole day. That used to feel impossible, and now it felt like a small miracle. That was the first day I opened my laptop and started looking for a new place. Not just a different apartment, my own space, a clean slate. I found a 1-bedroom on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but the windows let in a lot of light, and there was a tiny balcony where I could sit and breathe. I moved in with just the essentials, and no memories of him. No shared furniture, no framed pictures of us smiling through problems. Just me, my books, and the cat. And for once, that felt like enough. The first night there, I cried, not out of sadness, but release. I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine and let myself feel it all. The grief, the freedom, the fear, the possibility. I whispered to myself, I chose peace, and I meant it. For the first time in months, the silence around me didn't feel like punishment. It felt like healing. I started saying yes to things again. A weekend trip with Lena, dinner with coworkers. I even took myself out to a movie alone. At first, I kept looking around, thinking people were judging me for being by myself, but no one cared. And I laughed. I laughed out loud in the theater and didn't feel weird about it. I forgot how good it felt to just enjoy my own company. Work became a refuge. My boss noticed I was different, quieter, more focused. She pulled me aside one day and asked if I was okay. I told her the truth, just the short version. Called off the wedding, moving on. She looked at me for a second, then said, "Takes guts to walk away from what's not right. I've been there." I hadn't expected that. It made me feel less alone. I started therapy, not because of him exactly, but because I realized how many red flags I ignored. How often I twisted myself to keep the peace. How many times I chose silence instead of asking for what I needed. I told my therapist I was never the problem. She smiled like she'd been waiting for me to say that. We started working. From there, I made a list, not of goals, just things I wanted to feel safe, heard, free. I taped it to the fridge. Every day, I checked in, and slowly, those feelings started showing up. Not because someone else brought them, because I did. Because I stopped settling. Because I stopped begging to be chosen by someone who couldn't even stand beside me when it mattered. One morning I woke up and realized I'd gone a whole week without thinking about the wedding. No sadness, no what-ifs, just Becca life. A messy, ordinary, beautiful life. I stood in my little kitchen, drinking coffee, barefoot on cold tile, and I smiled. A real smile. He called again. Of course he did. They always do when they feel you slipping away for real. I didn't answer. I didn't even listen to the voicemail. I just stared at the screen and whispered, "Watch me thrive." And I meant every word. I ran into his mother at the grocery store. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She looked thinner, tired, like life had been chewing at her too. She saw me before I could turn away, and suddenly we were standing face to face near the frozen pizzas. She looked at me with those familiar eyes, a mix of pity and guilt. Then she said, "He's not doing well." I didn't flinch. I just said, "That's not my problem anymore." She started rambling, asking how I was, if I'd spoken to him, saying he'd been distant, cold, that maybe he didn't realize what he lost until it was too late. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at her, waiting to see if an apology would ever come. It didn't. Instead, she said, "He talks about you sometimes, says he messed everything up." I nodded once and said, "He did." Then I walked away. A week later, I saw him. Not planned, not expected, just fate being cruel or poetic, depending on how you look at it. I was at a bookstore with Lena, laughing about some ridiculous romance novel cover, when I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I turned, and there he was, 10 feet away, holding a coffee, looking right at me. I froze for half a second. Then I smiled. Not for him, for me, because I wasn't afraid anymore. He walked over slowly, cautiously, like I might bolt. His first words were, "You look good." I wanted to laugh, like that was the thing I needed from him now. I said thank you, and nothing more. He shifted awkwardly and asked how I'd been. I told him the truth. Peaceful. That word hit him. I saw it land. He tried to recover, talking about work, about how he'd been thinking about us, about everything. I stayed quiet. I let him talk, because sometimes silence is more powerful than anything you could say. When he finally asked if we could get coffee sometime and talk more, I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "No." He blinked. "No?" I nodded. "You don't get access to me anymore. Not after what you did." not after you watched me break," and walked away like it was nothing. He looked like he wanted to argue, but I kept going. "You called me dramatic. You laughed when I cried. You told your friends I wasn't enough. And now that your world's gone quiet, you remember what you lost? I'm not your second chance. I got even by getting better." Lena walked over then. Sensing the tension, she slid her arm through mine and said, "We done here?" I smiled at her and said, "Yeah, we're done." As we walked away, he just stood there, watching, like someone realizing too late the fire he set had turned into ashes he couldn't gather back. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't replay the conversation. I didn't doubt myself. I just made dinner, lit a candle, put on my favorite playlist, and danced barefoot in my living room. Because for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. I woke up the next morning with a strange calmness in my chest, like something had finally clicked into place. For months, I had been carrying grief like a second skin, mourning not just him, but the version of myself I'd abandoned trying to hold everything together. But something had shifted. That bookstore moment was the closure I didn't know I needed. The next few weeks moved quietly. No more texts, no more unexpected visits, no more updates from his family. It was like he had finally understood I meant it when I said I was done, and with that silence came peace. I didn't check my phone waiting for his name. I didn't feel the urge to replay old memories like a movie I couldn't stop watching. I just lived. I started seeing a therapist, just once a week. And not because I was broken, but because I wanted to keep rebuilding. I told her everything. How I lost myself trying to be enough for someone who was always half in. How I let gaslighting twist my reflection. How I'd look in the mirror and not even recognize. The girl staring back. She listened. She didn't rush. And every session felt like breathing again. I picked up old hobbies. I started painting again. Nothing fancy, just little canvases of skies and messy flowers that looked more like therapy than art. I reconnected with friends I had unintentionally pushed away during my relationship. I apologized when I needed to. I forgave myself when I didn't even realize I was carrying guilt. And slowly, I began to feel whole. And then, one evening, I stood in front of my mirror and took off my engagement ring. It had been sitting in a drawer for weeks, but that night I decided it was time. I sold it the next day, used the money to book a solo weekend trip to the coast. Just me, the ocean, and a journal. No expectations, no obligations, just presence. While walking on the beach at sunset, I whispered to the waves, I was never the problem. I needed to say it out loud. For every woman who's ever been made to feel too much, too loud, too needy, too dramatic, I said it. I chose peace. I walked away, and I never looked back. A few days after I returned, I got a message request on Instagram. It was from one of his friends. "You look happy." He said he still misses you. I didn't respond. I just deleted it. Because I'm not his closure. I'm not his what if. I'm not his clown for entertainment. I am the story he underestimated. The woman who got even, not with revenge, but with dignity. Now I watch myself thrive, in silence, in strength, in softness. The girl who once cried herself to sleep now sleeps with the windows open and dreams of new beginnings. I don't want him back. I don't want revenge. I just want my life. And that's exactly what I have. Because in the end, he never stood up for me, but I did.